He bought me a one-way bus ticket and said, "Start a new life, Mum. It's for the best." I smiled, hugged him, and boarded the Greyhound with a soft thank you. I didn't know I was being exiled. I thought it was a vacation. But when I called him from the terminal 4 hours later, the line rang once, then nothing. I called again. This time it went straight to voicemail. The third time it said, "This number is no longer accepting calls." That's when I knew. I'd been erased. The station smelled like old metal and boiled coffee. I sat on a cold bench, suitcase between my knees, watching people rush past like they had somewhere worth arriving. I didn't. I'd left behind my plants, my slippers, my coat still damp on the hook. I hadn't even packed my good shoes. Just what Nick told me to. 3 outfits, a scarf, my ID. "Don't overthink it, Ma," he'd said. "You'll love this place, sun and quiet. Think of it like early retirement." Retirement? From what? From being his mother? I had $41 in my wallet and a sandwich he made me from whatever was left in the fridge, soggy turkey and too much mustard. I couldn't eat it. I sat there, watching the pigeons fight over someone's dropped Cheetos, and tried to remember the last time Nick hugged me without checking his watch. By evening, the terminal got colder. A woman in a red coat sat beside me for a while, asked if I was waiting for someone. I said yes. It wasn't a lie yet. She offered a smile, then moved on. People always do. At 9:15 p.m., the man at the information desk said they were closing the interior waiting area for cleaning. I nodded, like that meant something to me. He didn't ask where I was going, just turned the lights low and locked the doors behind me. Outside, the air bit through my sweater. I stood there for a long time, unsure what to do. I'd never been to this town. Nick said it was nice, said I'd like the slower pace. I didn't see slow, I saw indifferent. A world that didn't flinch when a 73-year-old woman was left standing on a sidewalk with no keys, no contacts, and no clue. I sat down on a metal bench under a flickering streetlight. My knees ached. The suitcase handle had left a bruise on my palm. I unwrapped the sandwich, took one bite, then wrapped it back up and tucked it under my coat. Waste not. Around midnight, I dozed off. Not sleep, not really. Just that old woman kind of rest, where your body stays alert no matter how tired your bones are. I dreamt of my old porch, the creak of the swing, the smell of the wisteria I planted the year Nick turned 10. When I woke, I was shivering. A bus pulled up, hissed to a stop. A young man got off, backpack slung over one shoulder, and gave me a strange look. I probably looked like a ghost. I felt like one. At 3:07 a.m., I called Nick one last time. My hands were shaking, not from emotion, from cold. The call didn't even try to connect. That was the final answer. He wasn't coming. Not now, not ever. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not rage, not even sadness. Just a kind of hard, quiet understanding. I wasn't lost. I was discarded, like a bag of clothes too worn to donate. And still, I stood up, slowly. My knees groaned, my back resisted, but I stood. Because no matter what he thought, I was not a ghost. Not yet. The first place I walked into was a diner with yellowed blinds and a sign that blinked, "Open 24 hours," like it was trying to convince itself. I didn't have a plan. Just cold hands and a stomach that wouldn't stop sounding like a leaky pipe. A girl behind the counter, couldn't have been older than 20, looked up as I entered and gave a tired smile. "Coffee?" she asked. I nodded and slid into a corner booth. The plastic seat was cracked. The menu was sticky, but the coffee came fast and hot. And when I wrapped my hands around the mug, I felt like I belonged to something again. Even if it was just this seat and this cup. I didn't order food. I didn't want to part with a single dollar until I had to. The waitress, Lila, according to her name tag, didn't press. She just refilled my coffee twice without asking. On her third round, she paused and tilted her head. "You waiting for someone?" I could have lied. Said I was visiting family, waiting on a cousin, anything. But something about her tone, flat but not unkind, made me say the truth. No. My son put me on a bus and blocked my number. She didn't flinch. Didn't make the face people make when they hear something impolite too early in the day. "Jesus," she muttered. Then, after a pause, "You got a place to go?" "No." She looked around. The diner was empty, save for a man dozing near the window and a cook with earbuds in, flipping something that smelled like regret. "There's a women's shelter a few blocks from here," she said. "Run by a church, not the preachy kind. They do intake in the mornings." I nodded. She tore a piece of receipt paper and scribbled an address. When she handed it over, I noticed her fingers were calloused, nails chipped from too much scrubbing. She'd been working long before she ever clocked in. I left her a $2 tip. I shouldn't have. But I did. The shelter sat behind a grocery store, a 2-story brick building with a peeling cross above the door and a notice taped to the glass. No new intakes after 10 a.m. It was 9:42. A woman opened the door when I knocked. She was tall, tired, and kind in the way nurses and social workers are. Efficient, not soft. "Name?" she asked, clipboard in hand. "Martha Louise Bennett." She didn't ask for a story, just showed me to a cot in a room with 5 other women, all older than me, or close to it. The air smelled like cleaning spray and canned soup. My cot had a folded towel, a toothbrush in plastic wrap, and a pair of socks. No shame, just logistics. "Dinner's at 6, breakfast at 7. You help out, you stay, that's the rule." "I understand," I said. She looked at me for a beat longer than necessary. "You've been through something." "Yes." She nodded, like that was enough. "You'll get through something too." That night, I shared soup with women named Ida, Pauline, and Bernice. None of us asked what brought the others here. You learn, in places like that, to let people speak only when they want to. It's not silence. It's dignity. I listened. I peeled carrots in the kitchen. I swept the hallway after everyone went to bed. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But because tears felt like something Nick hadn't earned. I wouldn't give him that. He already had my trust, my wedding china, and my retirement fund. I wasn't giving him my tears too. Before bed, I sat on the edge of the cot and turned the events over in my mind like beads on a rosary. He bought me a one-way ticket, not even a round trip, just in case. He packed my suitcase. He zipped it himself. Told me he'd handle everything back home. I smiled at him on the curb, and he smiled back, like someone sealing a deal. He didn't just abandon me. He planned it. But I wasn't dead, and if I wasn't dead, then I could still live. Even here. Even now. The shelter had a morning routine like any other house, only stripped of privacy and padded comfort. At 6 a.m., the lights came on with a soft hum and the slow rise of stirring women, some groaning, some silent, some already dressed like they hadn't slept at all. I moved with the others, quietly, obediently. It reminded me of hospital wards, the same smell, the same blend of kindness and fatigue in the air. They gave us oatmeal and weak coffee. I ate every bite. After breakfast, I offered to help in the kitchen again. The same woman from before, her name was Celeste, I learned, handed me a bucket and a mop. "Floors," she said. Not unkind, just direct. I didn't mind. The mop gave me something to hold, something to press against the ground when my hands trembled with uselessness. I mopped slow and straight. I took pride in clean corners, even if no one else noticed. That's what no one tells you about old women. We know how to vanish in plain sight, and we know how to matter anyway. At noon, I sat on a bench in the garden behind the shelter. The roses were overgrown, the bench rusted, but the sun was out, and for a moment, I let myself breathe like I wasn't a discarded thing. That's when she sat down beside me. She wore a cardigan with holes in the sleeves and had one of those faces that looked like it had held more secrets than smiles. She didn't speak right away, just opened a plastic container of crackers and started nibbling like a bird. "Name's Lorraine," she said eventually. "Martha." She nodded once. "You knew?" "Yes." Another nod. "Kids do it?" I blinked. "Yes. Mine too." That was all we needed to know about each other. Over the next few days, Lorraine became my shadow, or maybe I became hers. She showed me how to stretch instant coffee into something drinkable, how to keep your towel from getting stolen, how to spot a volunteer who actually cared from one who just needed community service hours. She had a sharp tongue and a faster temper, but underneath that, she was gentler than she let on. One night, when a younger woman came in crying, barely 30, shivering and silent, Lorraine gave her the good blanket. Didn't say a word, just handed it over and rolled over on her cot. "You're not going to stay here long," she told me a week later. I shrugged. Where would I go? "You're not meant for stillness. You're one of those women who keeps moving until the shape of the world makes sense again." "I don't even know how to start," I said. "Start with fixing what's broken." That night, I looked at my hands. They were old, yes, and the veins ran like rivers, but they still worked. They could still clean, still sew, still smooth the corners of things. I thought about the house Nick grew up in, how I kept it running on coupons, prayers, and second-hand everything. I'd always known how to survive. I'd just forgotten. I didn't sleep well, but I woke up clear. The next morning, I asked Celeste if there were any radios that didn't work. She frowned. "Storage closet. Why?" "I used to fix things, little things." She gave me a box of tangled wires and cracked plastic. I sat in the corner of the dining room for hours, sorting screws and tracing power cords. It felt like writing a letter to a part of myself I hadn't spoken to in years. By the end of the day, 2 of the radios worked again. Not perfectly, but they played music, and that was enough. Celeste noticed. So did Lorraine. Word spread. By the end of the week, they started bringing me broken lamps, stuck zippers, a clock that hadn't ticked in 4 years. I fixed what I could. I told them I didn't want money. Just something to do. That's how I started living again. Not with a grand gesture, not with revenge, with repairs. Every shelter has rules, and this one was no different. Wake early. Work when assigned. No drugs, no guests, no questions asked after lights out. You followed them not because they made sense, but because not following meant leaving. And none of us wanted to leave. Not yet. After a month, they gave me a job title. Volunteer Maintenance Assistant. It wasn't on paper, but everyone said it like it meant something. Celeste even handed me a ring of keys, small ones, not for offices or safes, for broom closets, tool drawers, the padlock on the supply cabinet. "Makes things easier," she said. "You've earned it." I hadn't earned much in my life that felt like acknowledgement, but I took those keys and wore them on a lanyard around my neck like a medal. They clicked softly when I walked, a sound I came to love. It meant I mattered. By then, I knew most of the other women by name. Bernice, who hummed gospel songs when she thought no one was listening. Ida, who'd once taught home economics and still folded her blankets with military precision. Pauline, who rarely spoke but always gave away her toast. We didn't talk about why we were here, but sometimes, in the evenings, when the air turned soft and quiet, we'd sit in the garden with paper cups of tea and let our silence stretch like a thread that tied us together. And then there was Lorraine. She had arthritis in both hands and cursed at her knitting needles like they were old enemies, but she still tried. Said her fingers remembered more than her mouth did. We were alike in that way, storing things in our bodies that our words had grown too tired to say. One afternoon, as I tightened a chair leg in the common room, I saw her watching me. "You ever think of leaving?" she asked. I looked up. "Where would I go?" She shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Question's still real." I thought about it for a long time, not just that day, but the days after. I had nothing waiting for me in that city. No home, no family, no mailbox with my name on it. But I had this. A room, a purpose, women who didn't need explanations. Still. I kept waking up before the alarm, kept feeling something behind my ribs, not restlessness, not grief. Something sharper. Not anger either. Not yet. One evening, I sat with Celeste while she updated the shelter's donation logs. Her glasses kept slipping down her nose. I offered to help. She slid the notebook toward me without a word. We worked in silence until I asked, "Do people ever get back on their feet? Really?" She nodded slowly. "Some. Not many. Most don't have the paperwork, or the health, or anyone to vouch for them." "What about you?" I asked. She smiled, tired. "I've been here 12 years. That hit me harder than I expected. She was younger than me by at least 20 years, sharp, strong, and still, she was stuck. That night I took my notebook and made a list, not of dreams, of skills. What I could still do, what I knew how to fix, how to mend, how to bake without a recipe, how to iron pleats into a dress shirt just right. And then I wrote down the things I used to be: a cleaner, a mother, a room parent, a cashier, a gardener, a wife. Every line felt like a breadcrumb back to who I'd been before I became a person left on a bench with a suitcase and a lie. The next morning, I found Lorraine knitting in the garden. "I'm thinking about leaving," I said. She didn't look up. "Good." "You don't think I'll fall apart?" She snorted. "You fixed a blender with a butter knife. You'll be fine." I laughed. I hadn't laughed in days, maybe weeks. She handed me a folded index card. "Friend of mine runs a small rental place. Nothing fancy, but if you're serious..." I took the card. It had a name, a number, and a street I didn't recognize. For the rest of the day, I kept it in my pocket, fingers brushing it like it was a talisman. I didn't decide right away. I didn't rush. But I knew. I knew that something in me had shifted. I was no longer trying to survive what Nick had done to me. I was starting to live in spite of it. The card Lorraine gave me was bent at the corners by the time I actually dialed the number. I stood at the payphone 3 blocks from the shelter, clutching it like it might vanish if I hesitated too long. The phone rang 3 times before a woman answered, her voice sharp but not unkind. "Gina's?" I cleared my throat. "Lorraine gave me your number. Said you might have a room?" There was a pause. "You're the lady who fixes things?" "I try. I've got a back unit. Tiny. Leaks a bit when it rains, but it's got a lock, a bed, and hot water if you jiggle the handle just right." I almost cried. Not from sadness, from relief. "How much?" 300. Monthly. No lease. Cash only. I don't do drama, and I don't do late payments. "I can be there this afternoon." She gave me the address. I hung up and exhaled so hard it hurt. Back at the shelter, I packed slowly, I didn't have much. 2 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, a sweater Lorraine gave me, and the same brown suitcase Nick had zipped shut. I added a small toolkit I'd earned fixing ceiling fans, and the notebook with my list of skills. That was all. Lorraine met me by the garden. She didn't say anything, just handed me a plastic container of cookies she'd borrowed from the kitchen. I hugged her. She let me, arms stiff. "Don't come back unless it's to visit," she said. "You hear me?" I nodded. "I hear you." She watched me walk away. I didn't look back until I reached the corner. She was still there. The unit Gina rented me sat behind a house that leaned a little left, like it was tired of standing upright. The door creaked. The windows stuck. The floor sloped toward the kitchen. But it was mine. Every square foot of it. Mine. Gina was short, red-haired, and moved like someone who'd lived too long around unreliable people. She eyed me hard when I handed her the money. "You planning on bringing men around?" I blinked. "No." "Good. Don't want trouble. You break it, fix it. You miss rent, you're out." "Understood." She handed me a key on a Hello Kitty keychain. "Welcome to paradise." Inside, I stood for a long moment, letting the silence settle. Then I set my suitcase down and exhaled. That night, I slept in a bed that squeaked every time I turned, but I slept. The next morning, I walked to the dollar store and bought a kettle. I found a cracked mug with a blue flower on the side for 50 cents. I bought a box of peppermint tea and drank it on the porch, wrapped in my sweater, watching the city move around me like it didn't care whether I sank or swam. It was the best morning I'd had in months. Over the next week, I patched the screen door, unclogged the kitchen sink, and repainted the bathroom cabinet with leftover paint Gina gave me. "Didn't ask for renovations," she said, "but I'm not mad." Word got around. By the second week, one of Gina's tenants knocked on my door. "You the lady who fixes things?" "I do what I can." She handed me a toaster that only toasted one side. I took it without a word. Soon I had a little system. I fixed appliances in the evenings, left them on the porch with notes. "It's the coil, cleaned and rewired. Loose spring, tightened. Should be good for another year." One day, Gina stopped me on the walkway. "You could charge." I shrugged. "I like doing it." She nodded. "Still, you ever want something more stable?" She left the thought unfinished, but I understood. For the first time in a long while, someone was hinting at a future. At possibility. That evening, I sat on the steps and watched the sun go down behind the corner laundromat. I pulled out my notebook and turned to a blank page. Then I wrote, "Nick never answered my letter." Yes, I'd written him. A week after I arrived at the shelter. Just one letter. Nothing dramatic. Just a simple, "I'm okay, I'm safe, I hope you are too." No reply. I'd given him a chance. A chance to say he was sorry. A chance to ask how I was. A chance to be a son. He didn't take it. And maybe that was the final gift he gave me. Silence. It was clean. Cold. But clean. Sometimes, when a door doesn't open, it's not a prison. It's a wall. And maybe it's not meant to be walked through. Maybe it's meant to be left behind. The toaster led to a radio. The radio led to a lamp. And the lamp led to a coffee maker with a wire chewed halfway through by time or mice. Gina didn't ask which. Word travelled fast, not because I advertised, but because usefulness carries a scent. People sniff it out. They come to you when something's broken, and deep down they hope you'll fix more than just the thing they're holding. I never charged a dime. That wasn't what this was about. Every repair was a kind of prayer, a way to say, "I'm still here, I still matter. I know what wires go where. I know how to make something hum again. And maybe, if I kept doing it, I'd hum again too. On Thursdays, I walked to the public library, not for books, for the bulletin board. That's where I found a flyer printed on faded pink paper. Handy hands needed, seniors encouraged, part-time, light fixes, apply in person. It was taped below a sign for a missing cat and above a coupon for free dental screenings. I read it twice, tore the bottom tab off, and slid it into my sweater pocket. The address was 5 blocks from my unit, a small community centre tucked between a church and a run-down yoga studio. Inside, the floor squeaked and the lights buzzed faintly, but the woman at the desk smiled like I was exactly who she hoped would walk in. "You hear about the flyer?" she asked. "Yes, I fix things. Small things." "Perfect," she said, pushing a clipboard toward me. "Name?" "Martha Bennett." She smiled wider. "Great to meet you, Martha. We've got 2 broken vacuums and a fan that smells like it wants to explode. Think you could take a look?" I nodded, and just like that, I had a job. 2 afternoons a week, paid in cash. Nothing big, just enough for groceries, enough to buy a new pair of socks without guilt. But it was mine, and that made it more than enough. I worked quietly. People came in and out. Some knew my name. Most didn't. But over time they started leaving things with little notes. "If you have time, no rush." This was Grandma's. I fixed them all. Not for money, not for thanks. For the rhythm of it, for the clarity. One day, a woman brought in a watch. It didn't tick anymore. She said it used to belong to her husband. He'd worn it every day for 42 years, even when it stopped telling time. I took it home, cleaned it, opened the back, replaced the battery, wound it once. The next time she came in, I handed it back, ticking. She cried. Not loud, not messy, just a single tear and a thank you so soft it barely crossed the counter. That night, I sat on my tiny porch with a blanket around my knees and stared at the darkened sky. I thought of Nick, of the time I drove him to baseball practice in the rain because he forgot his cleats and wouldn't stop crying, of the lunches I packed, the birthdays I planned, the bills I paid behind closed doors so he could keep pretending we were middle class. I thought of all the times he said, "Thanks, Ma," without looking up from his phone. And I thought of the silence now, how thick it had become. I no longer checked for a letter, or a call, or even guilt. I wasn't waiting for him anymore, but I wasn't forgetting either. Some debts don't need collecting. Some just need naming. Her name was Dolores. She walked into the community centre one Thursday afternoon, carrying a broken sewing machine and a look I recognized instantly. The look of a woman holding herself together with pins and habit. She didn't say much, just slid the machine across the counter and said, "It used to belong to my mother. If you can't fix it, that's all right." I nodded and told her I'd try. It was old, one of those solid metal ones with a faded green body and chipped dials. I spent the rest of the afternoon with it on my lap, unscrewing, brushing out lint, realigning gears. It was slow work, the kind that needed patience more than precision. When Dolores came back the next week, and I showed her how the thread moved smooth again, how the pedal obeyed, she didn't cry. Not like the woman with the watch. She just reached over, touched the machine, and said, "My mother made my wedding dress on this." Then she looked at me. "You didn't just fix it. You gave something back I didn't know I missed." That's when I knew we were alike. She came by again, brought me a potted violet the second time, brought cookies the third. By the fourth visit, we were sitting on the front steps of the centre, drinking coffee from paper cups and swapping stories in the lazy way only 2 women who've lived through their share of being forgotten can. Dolores had 2 daughters. One lived in Texas and hadn't called in 7 months. The other lived across town and only visited when she needed help with the kids. "They tell me I should be grateful they're busy," she said once, "as if motherhood has an expiration date." I didn't say anything, just handed her another cookie and nodded. That was enough. It was in our 6th conversation that I told her about Nick. Not the whole thing, just the edges. "He bought me a one-way bus ticket," I said. "Told me it was a vacation, then blocked my number." She didn't gasp, didn't ask questions, just whispered, "Mine sent me a plant for my birthday. No card. I only knew it was from her because she used my maiden name." We sat quiet for a long time after that. Dolores started helping me at the center. She wasn't good with tools, but she had steady hands and a kind voice. She took intake notes, offered tea to the older clients, read labels when my eyes got tired. We called ourselves the Unclaimed Mothers, half in jest, half in truth. One afternoon, a teenage boy came in with a broken fan and a scowl. Dolores looked him over once, then nudged me and said, "Give him something to do. He's not here for the fan." So I handed him a screwdriver and told him to hold the base while I worked. He didn't talk much, but he didn't leave either. And when he did, he mumbled, "Thanks." Dolores was right. He came back the next day with a desk lamp and a sandwich for me. Just like that. We'd started something. That week, I asked the center director if we could start a Fix-It Friday, an open table for anyone to come by with broken things and stay a while. She loved the idea. The first Friday, we had 6 people. The second, 12. By the third week, we had 23. All kinds. Old women with slow clocks, young mothers with squeaky strollers, a man who brought in a lamp and ended up telling us about his late wife between sips of tea. Dolores ran the welcome table. I ran the tools. A young volunteer named Jay printed signs and helped carry heavy items. It wasn't fancy, but it was growing. And that's when it happened. On the 4th Friday, a woman approached our table with a stroller wheel in one hand and a familiar last name on her form, Nick's last name. I stared at it like it was a lie. "Sorry," I said gently. "Are you related to a Nicholas Bennett?" She blinked. "Yeah, he's my ex. Why?" I didn't answer, didn't need to. Because in that moment, everything clicked into place. Nick hadn't just moved on. He'd fallen apart. I didn't ask her more. That would have been cruel. And honestly, I didn't need details. The way she said ex was enough. Sharp around the edges, worn in the middle. Like something she'd practiced, just to keep herself from unraveling when the subject came up. She was young, maybe 30. Pretty in the way women are when they don't try to be. Her nails were short, her shoes practical. The stroller wheel she held had snapped clean at the hinge. I showed her where to sit and told her I'd take a look. She thanked me, distracted. Dolores raised an eyebrow once we were alone. "That a coincidence?" "Doesn't matter," I said. But the truth was, it did. Over the next hour, I cleaned the wheel's bracket, replaced the screw, reinforced the joint with an old washer I'd salvaged from a fan 2 weeks back. As I worked, I watched her. How she bounced the baby with one foot. How her eyes kept scanning the room like she wasn't used to resting. When I handed the stroller back, she lit up. Not with gratitude exactly, with something quieter. Relief. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I wanted to." She looked at me for a second too long. "You remind me of someone. Hopefully in a good way." She smiled. "Yeah, the kind of woman who didn't ask what you needed. She just did it." I nodded once. "Those are the ones who survive." She lingered a bit, then said, "If you ever need help with anything, I do resumes. Admin stuff. Not much, but that's something, I said. That's a lot. She wrote her name and number on a small notepad near the sign-in sheet. I didn't tell her who I was, what I was. I just watched her walk out the door, her baby cooing, her steps lighter. Dolores didn't say anything for a while. Then, how'd it feel? Like watching a window close gently. Not a door? No, a window. Something I used to look out of. I thought about Nick that night, about what had happened to his life since I left. Maybe his marriage fell apart. Maybe his luck turned. Maybe karma had a quiet schedule and finally caught up. But that wasn't the part that mattered. The part that mattered was this. I didn't want to call him. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want anything. And that was the victory. The next morning, I opened the envelope Dolores had left for me 2 days earlier. Inside was a $20 bill and a note that said, "For the Friday fund. Let's buy some better chairs." I walked to the thrift store down the block and found 2, mismatched, sturdy, $7 each. I carried them back myself, one in each hand, and placed them on either side of the tool table like they belonged. At noon, Jay came by with extra sandwiches from the bakery and handed me one. "You ever think about turning this into a real business?" he asked, mouth full of tuna salad. "This is a real business," I said. "It just doesn't charge." He laughed. "Fair." Later that afternoon, a woman came in with a broken slow cooker and a son with a learning disability. He liked buttons and wires. While I fixed the cooker, I showed him how the heating plate connected to the dial, how copper wiring carried heat. He was quiet, focused, smiling. That night, I made another list in my notebook, not of skills, of people. Jay, Dolores, Gina, the woman with the watch, the boy with the buttons, the young mother with Nick's last name. It was growing, and so was I. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building. The first envelope came tucked under my door. No name, no return address, just my name written in small, nervous letters. Martha. Inside, a single sheet of paper, photocopied, grainy. A flyer for a local room for rent listing. Nothing special. But I knew the handwriting in the margin. "Thought you might like this one. Closer to the center. Private entrance. Garden." It was from Gina. I hadn't asked her for anything. But she noticed. The way I winced every time I climbed my unit's uneven step. The way I paused before opening the warped front door. The way my knees flared when it rained. I went to see it the next day. The new place was small, yes, but it was clean and quiet and had a porch just big enough for a folding chair and a potted plant. The landlady was a widow named Carla, who raised her eyebrows when I told her I'd pay in cash, on time, every month. "People say that," she muttered. "Then they vanish." "I won't." She gave me a look, then nodded once. "You want it? It's yours. First and last month up front." I moved in 3 days later. Gina came by with her son and a toolbox. "You're not getting rid of me that easy," she said, setting it on the kitchen floor. "That outlet buzzes when it shouldn't." Dolores brought a pillow and a second-hand electric kettle. Jay brought a plant. "No idea what it is," he said, handing it to me like an apology. "But it's green." It sat on the windowsill for exactly 4 days before I noticed the roots curling out the bottom. I repotted it in a chipped ceramic bowl and whispered, "Grow anyway." That was how things worked now. I didn't ask. They showed up anyway. It wasn't about repayment. It was about recognition. By now, the Friday repair table had tripled in size. Dolores called it the workbench, and Jay started a social media page. "We're not going viral or anything," he laughed. "But people are asking about you. You've got a wait list." I didn't need fame. I just needed purpose. One afternoon, a woman brought in a box of broken Christmas lights, strings and bulbs tangled like a nest of regret. She apologized for wasting my time. I told her gently, "Nothing that brings light is ever a waste." It took me 3 hours and 6 rewired sockets, but when I plugged them in, the lights blinked once, then glowed. She cried. "First time they've worked since my daughter died," she whispered. "I thought they never would again." I didn't ask for more. She hugged me tight, like a mother might, and then left. Later that week, Carla knocked on my door holding a letter. "This came for you," she said. Hand-delivered. The handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar. The return address? Blank. Inside was a single page, folded 3 times, and I knew the moment I unfolded it that it was from Nick. I sat down slowly, tea untouched beside me, hands steady not from peace, but from decision. He'd written in block letters, like a student unsure of tone. "Mum, I don't know where to start. You probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm writing because I'm not okay. I haven't been since that day. I lied to myself for months, maybe years, thought I was doing what was best, thought you'd understand. But I didn't give you a choice. The truth is, everything's falling apart. The house, the marriage, my job. And I keep thinking about the last time I saw you. How you smiled and said, 'I'll call when I get there.' You didn't. And that silence has been the loudest thing in my life since. I miss you. I'm sorry. I don't expect anything. I just needed to say it. Nick." I folded the letter once, then twice, then 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I simply stood, opened my drawer, and placed it beside my screwdriver set. Because I was still here, still building, still choosing. And just because he remembered didn't mean I had to return. I didn't tell anyone about the letter. Not Dolores, not Jay, not Carla. Not because I wanted to keep it secret, but because it didn't ask for an answer. It wasn't a question. It was a mirror, and I'd already made peace with what I saw in it. A week later, I saw him. I was walking back from the community centre, tote bag over one shoulder, 2 pairs of pants inside needing buttons. The weather had turned warm. The kind of soft afternoon where strangers nod at each other on the sidewalk like it's a ritual. That's when I spotted him. Nick. Sitting on the curb across from the bus stop. Same hunched posture, same nervous foot tapping. His face was older, not from time, from strain. His hair was thinner. His suit didn't quite fit. He looked like a boy wearing the idea of a man. He didn't see me at first. I stood still, just watched. When he did glance up, it wasn't recognition that hit him first. It was disbelief. Like I was a ghost he'd half hoped and half dreaded to meet again. He stood too quickly, wiped his hands on his pants like he was preparing for a test he hadn't studied for. "Mum," he said. I nodded. "Nick." There was a silence so wide between us it could have fit all the unspoken apologies of our lives. He looked at the tote bag. "Still sewing?" "Still fixing," I corrected. "I didn't know where to find you," he said. I thought maybe you'd moved again." "I did," I said. "Twice." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I read your letter. I meant it." "I know." More silence, not heavy this time, just careful. He looked thinner than I remembered, paler, like life had pulled at him in ways it hadn't before. And something in me softened. Not enough to reach, but enough to steady. "Why are you here?" I asked. He hesitated. "I lost the house," I heard. "And the job." I nodded. "And, well, I guess I lost everything. I don't really know what I'm doing." "You looking for help?" He looked up. "No." he said quickly. I mean, not money, not anything like that. Then what? He looked down at his hands. I don't know. Maybe just a place to stand for a minute, with someone who remembers who I was before I messed it all up. I let that sit. Then I said, that person? The one you were? He put me on a bus with a sandwich and no plan. He told me it was a vacation. Then he blocked my number. So no, I don't think I remember him. I think I buried her version of you. He winced, but he didn't run. I stepped closer, just enough for him to hear me clearly. You don't get to just show up and ask for a memory. You have to build one. He nodded, slowly. I can do that. We'll see. That was all. I didn't invite him to dinner. I didn't write down my address. I didn't hug him. But I didn't turn away. He watched me walk off. When I reached the corner, I looked back. He was still standing there, hands in pockets, waiting. He didn't call again for 3 weeks. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe the encounter on the sidewalk was enough, or too much. I didn't know what I wanted. Not forgiveness, not really. Not revenge either. Just the space to choose. Then one Friday, he showed up at the center. Dolores saw him first. She gave him a look that could slice wallpaper. Yours? She asked, not bothering to whisper. I nodded once. Formally. Nick hovered near the donation bins, his hands jammed deep into his coat pockets. I pretended not to see him. Let him sweat. Eventually, he stepped closer. Hey, he said softly. I, saw the page online. Jay's thing. Thought I'd come by. See what you've built? You found your way here, I said. Guess you're learning directions? Dolores smirked. Jay, across the room, raised an eyebrow. That your son? Unfortunately, I said, not softly enough. Nick flushed, but didn't flinch. He looked around. It's a lot more than I expected. What did you expect? I asked. A rocking chair and silence. I don't know, he admitted. Not this. Not tables full of people and tools and you. Running, all of it. That's your problem, Nick. You thought I stopped being a person when I stopped being your convenience. He lowered his gaze. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that. But I'm not handing out punishments today. He stood there, unsure, waiting for permission that wouldn't come. So he did the only thing he could. He picked up a chair, a small folding one near the wall with a busted hinge. This one's broken. I know, I said. He set it on the table, hesitated. Want me to try fixing it? Jay was watching now. So was Dolores. The whole room held its breath. I nodded. Go ahead. He fumbled with the tools. His hands weren't used to screws and pliers. He bent the bracket wrong, then bent it back. He didn't ask for help. Dolores nudged me. He's sweating like a man peeling shrimp at his ex-wife's wedding. I chuckled. When Nick finally got the chair to fold and unfold without complaint, he looked up like a child hoping a drawing would make the fridge. It works. It's not straight, I said. I'll keep trying. That was enough for now. He came back the next Friday, then again the week after. He didn't ask for a key to my apartment, didn't bring up old photos or birthdays he missed. He swept the floor, carried boxes, helped a woman solder a broken lamp. He didn't ask to be let back in. He just started showing up. One day, after everyone left, I found him in the back, tightening screws on the storage shelf. He looked up, not surprised. I'm not trying to fix everything, he said. I know I can't. But if you'll let me, I'd like to keep fixing something. I stood there a long time. Then I handed him the donation logbook. Start with the receipts, I said. They're crooked. He stayed late most Fridays now. After the others left, after Dolores packed up the tea and Jay wiped the tables, Nick would linger, quietly, without permission, but without resistance. At first, he sorted wires, then tools. Eventually, I gave him a drawer. Not trust, not yet, just a drawer. One night, as we walked out together, he asked, "Do you remember when I broke that ceiling fan in the living room?" I nodded. "You climbed it like a tree, then blamed gravity." He laughed. "You didn't yell." "No point. I fixed it in 20 minutes. He grew quiet after that. We reached the corner where our paths split. He stopped. "Mum," he said, eyes lowered, "can I ask you something?" I waited. "If I hadn't blocked your number, if I had just told you the truth that day, would it have changed anything?" "Yes," I said, flat and certain. He flinched. "You still would have sent me away," I added, "but I would have packed a sweater." He laughed once, a dry, embarrassed sound. Then he looked at me like he was trying to find the woman who raised him inside the woman who had outgrown him. "I didn't know who you were," he said. "Not really." "That was always your choice." A long pause. Then he said, "I know I don't get to ask for things, but if you ever needed something, anything, please ask me." "I don't need anything," I said. "And if I did, I'd know how to get it without you." He nodded. Not hurt. Humbled. That was progress. The next morning, I arrived at the center early. The light hadn't shifted yet, and the building still smelled like floor wax and old coffee. I found a small package on my table. No label, just a folded note inside. It said, "For the ones you fix, you've earned better tools." Inside, a new set of precision screwdrivers, neatly arranged in a velvet-lined case, clean, sharp, expensive. Jay swore he didn't do it. Dolores raised both eyebrows and said, "Somebody's finally paying interest on old debts." I didn't ask. I didn't have to. That Friday, I watched Nick fix a broken blender motor with careful fingers. He didn't ask for praise, didn't check if I was watching. Later, I slipped the smallest screwdriver from the new set into his hand. "You'll need that," I said. "Your grip is terrible." He smiled, said nothing, kept working. And for the first time in years, I didn't see my failure standing across from me. I saw a man building something with his own hands. Not for me, for himself. It started with a broken table. One of the center's regulars, an elderly woman named Miriam, with hands curled from arthritis, brought in a small folding table she'd used to sort her pill bottles and knit in the evenings. The leg had buckled, and she couldn't afford a new one. Nick and I fixed it together, sitting cross-legged on the floor, measuring the angle, bracing the hinges. It took an hour. When we returned it, Miriam touched the table like it was made of glass. "You know," she said softly, "when things break now, I don't throw them away. I just ask Martha." That was the moment something inside me tilted, like a chair finally finding its fourth leg. That afternoon, I wrote a note and pinned it to the center bulletin board. "Free repair workshops, Fridays. No cost, no shame. Bring what's broken. Stay as long as you like." And underneath it, "We're not fixing things. We're fixing what people were told to discard." The next week, Carla, my landlady, brought by her sister, whose son had been stealing copper wire out of old electronics to sell. "Maybe you can show him what fixing looks like," she said. We did. He stayed 4 hours, asked questions, took notes. At the end, he said, "This is better than scrapping." Word travelled faster than we expected. A local paper wrote a small piece. Then a teacher from the high school asked if her students could volunteer. "They don't know how to work with their hands," she said. "Only their phones." Jay started a schedule. Dolores organized supplies. I printed signs that read, "No experience needed, patience required." By month's end, we had 6 tables, 3 tool sets, a wall rack of salvaged parts, and a jar labelled Tea Fund that somehow always had exactly enough. We never called it a business, but it ran like one, honest, noisy, and always just on the edge of chaos. Nick suggested we call it the bench. I said it was too polite. Dolores said it needed more bite. Jay offered second chances. Too soft. In the end, it was Lorraine who named it. She came to visit one afternoon, leaning heavier on her cane than before, but her voice still sharp as vinegar. She looked around, took it all in, the people, the shelves, the tools, the laughter in the corners. "You built a kitchen," she said. I blinked. "A kitchen? Yeah, this is where broken things come to get fed, mended, cleaned up, and returned with their dignity intact." The name stuck. The kitchen. We painted it on the door. The Friday after that, a woman I didn't recognize stood just outside the threshold, her hands gripping a cracked jewelry box. "Is this the place?" she asked. "It is." She stepped inside. That evening, when I turned off the lights, I stood in the doorway for a long time, just breathing in the quiet. The good kind of quiet. The kind that follows laughter and work well done. Nick came up behind me. "You really made something here." "No," I said. "We did." And I meant it, because this wasn't my redemption. It was my return. The first time someone called me Miss Martha, I didn't correct them. It was a little girl, no more than 7, dragging in a broken toy piano with stickers peeling off and keys that stuck when you pressed them. Her mother stood beside her, embarrassed, already saying, "It's not worth fixing." But I waved her quiet. If it matters to her, it matters. We spent an hour on that thing, took it apart gently, cleaned the dust, replaced a cracked spring with a piece of coiled wire Jay had saved from a fan. When we finished and the keys clicked again, not perfectly but enough, the girl smiled like we'd handed her a cathedral. Her mother cried. Quiet, grateful tears. The kind women only shed when they're not being watched. Except I saw her, because I've been her. The following week, I wrote something on the chalkboard above the entrance to the kitchen. "You're not broken. You were just left in the wrong hands." I didn't need to sign it. They knew it was mine. Nick came by less often now, but when he did, he brought something with him. An old lamp, a sad toaster, once even a bike someone had left on the curb. He never tried to take credit. He just worked. And when I handed him the last tool one Friday evening, he looked at me like he still couldn't believe I hadn't disappeared. "You ever think you'll forgive me?" he asked. "I already did," I said. "But I haven't forgotten." He nodded. That was enough. Later, I sat on my porch, tea cooling in the cup, the air thick with jasmine and dusk. The city moved quietly around me. Inside, my tools were lined up, my plants watered, my notebook, full now, sat closed on the windowsill. I used to think silence was survival, that the best way to stay was to shrink, to not ask, to not make noise, to be so small no one would notice when they started to forget me. But I was wrong. Silence isn't survival. Silence is what they count on, and I won't be silent anymore. So if you're reading this, and you've been made to feel like your usefulness expired the day your hair turned grey, I see you. If someone told you your hands were too shaky, your voice too soft, your presence too inconvenient, I hear you. If you've been left, erased, repackaged as a burden, and asked to go quietly, I remember what that feels like. And I'm telling you now, you are not broken. You are not disposable. You are not alone. We've built a place here. Not out of bricks, but out of memory, out of the stubborn refusal to stay erased. And we don't yell here. We build, we write, we fix, we remember. Out loud. Subscribe to Grandma's Untold Stories, because this is not just a story. This is how we come back. Together, piece by piece. And the next time they try to throw us away, we won't go. We'll build a kitchen, and we'll feed the world with the strength they forgot we had.